Hey guys, how's it going? Another Trade Genius podcast here with Bob and Phil. Not sure if you've noticed, we've kind of seen it here and there. Eggs are going way up in price. This is more inflation that you have to deal with. And so we're going to talk about that and what it means for you guys and actually how you can hedge this inflation. And so let's dive into this video and check it out.
Trade Junior.
Hey, Phil, I wasn't going to talk about eggs, but Costco laid an egg on me yesterday. So I thought, hey, let's talk about this. Is that I went to Costco yesterday, and I've been hearing here and there that there's been some spot shortages, some bird flu, this and that.
Right.
And I was going there for something else, and we'll talk about that too. And I said they didn't have that. And so I went into the dairy section where the eggs are, and it's like half the case is empty. In fact, they didn't even have some of the dairy too. That's probably a story for another day, but wiped out of eggs. And so I went out and I saw one of the the guys out there that stocked the shelves. I said, hey, what's up with the eggs? He goes, we're cleaned out. I'm not sure when we're going to get eggs back in. Big bird flu, avian flu. And then he goes, oh, and then they don't have Kleenex. They don't have garbage bags. He goes, we're out of a lot of stuff. And, it started making me think. I said, well, what about Trader Joe's? So, and I said to the guy, because, everybody who works at Costco didn't know Trader Joe's. They said, they're wiped out too. and ironically, the only place that had it was Whole Foods. And I thought I was getting ready for the $7 to $9 a dozen thing. Decent price, for the eggs. But it got me thinking when I came back home, I'm like, man, what is up with eggs? And I have this chart here I want to show you, and you can see what's up with eggs. This is average price. And so the average price is $3.35 a dozen. Believe it or not, in California, normally I pay a little bit less than that. I pay about $2.69 for large eggs. For jumbo eggs, I pay about $3.35, $3.40. And I usually buy them at Trader Joe's. They're usually the best price for eggs. Or I go to Costco and get like the 5 dozen thing if I'm going to be, cooking some other things. But that is an amazing price. And I went and talked to the guys. I get coffee every morning because they own a bagel shop. I was like, hey guys, what's up with the eggs? He said, you getting any shortage? He said, no. He said, but we used to get a case of eggs. He wouldn't tell me how many are in the case, probably because he wouldn't tell me how cheap he was getting it. And but he said I paid $18.85 in 2020 pre-pandemic supply chain. He goes, I'm paying $85 now. So a 4x increase in the price of eggs, is probably, and for them, breakfast is a big profit maker for restaurants, because, if you look at the input food cost of food, I'm getting eggs at the most, 20 cents an egg, right? And, when you get 2 eggs at a restaurant, they're charging $6. So if these guys are starting to cut into their margin on the eggs, and bacon for a while, as you know, went skyrocketing too. So I'm thinking like, okay, this is going to put some pressure on not only the restaurants, not only the people, but also the whole baking industry is now at risk if they have, shortages, because eggs go into a lot of things. So I'm expecting some downstream supply chain issues across the board. And, they're going to use that as an excuse to jam prices for everything. And I want to know what your thoughts are on this.
Well, when you pulled up the chart and, I'm not looking at egg prices all that often. I did notice that, they were trending up, but man, like if you look at obviously 2020 big spike because everybody was scrambling to buy, food and all their other toiletries and whatever, because no one knew what if shelves were going to get restocked, right? So you had that rush, but then, and at that time it felt like, man, everything's out. Now here we are 2 years later, and the prices back during that pandemic rush look minuscule compared to where we're at. I mean, we're up, well, not quite 2x, but still yet though. I mean, from $2 to $3.50, my goodness. And I would, like you, I went into Costco the other week, and for the first time ever, there was no eggs. Usually there's cases and cases, and there was nothing. So I think it's interesting because, and we've talked about this a little bit, we're kind of fragile here, right? With the inflation already kind of, we're on our heels with inflation. So any little thing that happens to the supply chain side of things, whether it's bird flu or even growing, if there's problems with the crops, we're screwed. Like financially, a lot of people are going to have a hard time paying their food bill because we're just out of ammo here. It would be one thing if the inflation hadn't been stoked, but you can blame the powers that be, the Fed and all that, for putting us here, because in reality, they should have stopped with the money printing probably when we made a new high after the pandemic scare. But did they? No. And as we've shown you guys, they just kept pouring more liquidity into the system. Now you're kind of you're in between a rock and a hard place here, because you don't really have much to give anywhere. You don't have much more to give in inflation. I mean, you're already paying through the roof. And then if you have any supply side issues, that's going to get exponentially worse. It'll be like eggs are going to be like Bitcoin. So, that the chart's going to go parabolic just like a Bitcoin chart. And that's why I thought the title was appropriate. But, so like Bitcoin, now it's like how Bitcoin, do we hedge that?
Just like Bitcoin, you can't see it.
Yeah. Virtual
I got
some
charts though for you, Phil. If people want to know kind of how to hedge, and if you own a restaurant, you might want to be really interested. But the first one up here is this is ADM. This is my de facto food inflation stock. I own 900 shares of this company, and I'm waiting to add my last final 100 shares of this. Needs to break that. If you notice, it's a slowly ascending triangle here. And once it breaks that 97 area, that again, Phil, it's going to measured move is into the 130s.
Wow.
The only thing that's holding ADM back now is that they have ethanol production, and the government's kind of screwing with them a little bit on it, because they don't want you to have anything other than freaking EV, right? So, because they know intuitively, that corn prices, feed into food inflation. So they're trying to do everything they can, in their interventionist ways. And we're going to talk about intervention by the government and by the Fed, tomorrow. But here, that's going to resolve itself because, obviously the House is now Republican, and Grassley runs, he's a senator from Iowa, and that's the ethanol state. So I think whatever games the Biden administration is going to play here are going to get probably blown up. But buy ADM, I sell against it every 2 weeks, to keep bringing my cost structure down. And once that breaks 97, the food inflation I think is embedded this year. We're gonna pop. And Phil, I'm thinking probably what we should do is before the Fed the CPI meeting on Thursday, maybe we'll do when it'll come out after the CPI. We should talk about, I think they have embedded problems again, even though they've been driving the inflation rate down here through a lot of intervention. I don't think they can control this food. They can't play the futures game with this. Because then you get food shortages, and I think that's what we're starting to see. Right. There is egg futures, by the way. Yeah. So if they're screwing with egg futures, guys just won't produce. They'll just sell direct.
Right.
And so I think we have big problems. But speaking of eggs, there is actually an egg producer that's a public company, and it's called Vital Farms. And look, that chart looks like a thing of beauty to me too. It already had one breakout, kind of created a double top there. And now if it pushes up again, in fact, not even really double top, if you see there on our Ranger bracket, it actually cycled up a little bit. And so that double top is not a valid formation there. It's actually a breakout pattern. And if it pushes back up through there again, we're looking for another, couple point move higher. So put this one on your list. If they can't get food inflation under control, these are two stocks you probably want to own. We already talked about Kroger on the retail side, and I think those are the stocks you want to own in 2023 if they can't get this food inflation under control.
Yeah, so that reading on Thursday, which is what everybody's looking towards now, when we probably get a drift up into all the markets, crypto, risk on stocks, probably all drifts up into that from what we're seeing as of today. But that's going to be a critical point, data point for us going further into this month of January. So, I know there's some clues that inflation might be cooling. It'll be really interesting. The market's so emotional around that CPI print. you kind of just have to like take your trades off and see what the print is, see what the reaction is, and then follow that overall trend move after that.
Yeah, and just so you guys know, there's a difference between CPI going flat and your ability to afford the new pricing. So the Wall Street may share a flattening CPI, but really what is important to you and me is the price level to wage level ratio, and that's still favoring you getting poorer. And so they may not be able to well, they can't do anything about that because they want to actually lower wages too. So we're in a tough spot here, and eventually that grind is going to grind the markets down, and it's going to grind the economy down too. So we'll keep talking more about that. I think recession is baked in the cake. And Phil, you and I talked about this before. We have probably a double dip. I mean, a double top inflation coming at us in 2023 because with China reopening, it's going to force inflation back into the system, and we got food inflation going right now. And it's definitely going to break something else and somewhere else in the markets.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting yesterday that the couple Fed speakers were talking yesterday, and they said really it's the core what was it, core inflation less housing. So they really don't care about the housing, and that's not going to play a part into their decision making, even though that might lower the overall readings. They're going to look at that reading excluding housing. So I thought that was interesting. So when we see these numbers come in, just keep in mind that, because I think the Fed really wants to get housing prices down as part of their overall plan, but they're going to discount that part of the equation. So just keep that in mind going forward when we do see these CPI prints come in. Okay, guys, well, that's going to do it for this Trade Genius podcast. Thanks so much for watching. We'd love to hear your thoughts and, how's egg pricing in your region? Let us know. We'd love to hear from you guys. Please hit like and subscribe, and we'll see you on the next video. Take care.
Trade Genius.